For 5 years, he forgot our anniversary. This time, he posted a gym selfie instead. So I served his breakfast with a side of divorce papers. But trust me, that was just the beginning. If you're watching this, tell me where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to subscribe, because what I'm about to share might just change the way you see your own reflection. The morning started like every other. Too quiet, too cold, and filled with the kind of silence that doesn't bring peace. It brings memories. I got out of bed before the sun peeked over the horizon. It was our wedding anniversary. Not that Dennis would remember. He hadn't in 5 years. Still, something inside me, something small and soft and foolish, clung to hope. I pulled out the cast iron skillet he liked, the one he said made bacon taste like his childhood. I lined up the slices just how he liked them. Toast, golden. Eggs, scrambled with that little bit of cream. Coffee, strong and black. I set the table, smoothing out the napkins like I used to when the kids were little and birthdays mattered. I even lit a candle, not because I thought he'd notice, but because I did. Then I heard it, that stupid chime his phone makes when he posts on social media. I waited a beat, holding my breath. Maybe, just maybe, he was writing something sweet, a memory, a thank you, an acknowledgement. I walked over. There it was, his face, sweaty, smug, smiling at the gym. No days off, grinding even on the weekends. Not a single word about me, about us, about our life. I stood there, still in my robe, the smell of bacon in the air, staring at a man who hadn't even glanced at me all morning. He walked into the kitchen a minute later, sniffed the air like a satisfied customer at a diner. Smells good, he said. Don't forget to flip the toast next time. It was a little too dark yesterday. That was it. No good morning. No thank you. No anniversary. I didn't say a word. I simply walked over to the counter, picked up the manila envelope I had hidden behind the flour canister, and placed it beside his plate. "What's this?" he asked, chuckling as he wiped his hands on a napkin. "More junk mail?" "It's your breakfast," I said, keeping my voice steady. "And your future." He opened it, still grinning, that stupid grin, until he saw the first page. His fork clinked against the plate. "What the hell is this, Joanne?" "Divorce papers." He laughed, but there was a tremor to it. "You're joking." I looked at him for the first time in weeks. Really looked. The lines around his eyes had deepened. His hair had gone grayer, but he still dyed it. He still cared about how he looked, but never once stopped to wonder how I felt. "I'm not joking, Dennis," I said. "Not anymore." He stood up, pointing a finger like he used to when the kids did something wrong. "You're being dramatic. You forgot our anniversary," I said quietly. "Again. Joanne, come on. That's not a reason to throw away 30 years. I took a deep breath. "No, but 30 years of being invisible is." He sat back down, rubbing his temples. "We've got a good life. We're not unhappy." "No, you're not unhappy," I corrected. "You have your gym, your routine, your little fan club online. I'm just the woman who does your laundry and refills your prescriptions." He tried to speak. I didn't let him. "I'm done being your background noise." I walked upstairs, my heart thudding so loud I thought I might faint. I sat on the edge of the bed we hadn't shared in months and stared at the old photograph on the dresser. Our wedding day. I barely recognized that girl. She had dreams. Now she had rage. That night, he didn't talk to me. Not really. He paced the living room, made a few calls, slammed a few doors. But I stayed in our bedroom, alone. It was strange how quiet the world gets when you stop begging to be heard. The next morning I woke up before him again. I didn't cook. I didn't clean. I didn't make the bed. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table and stared out the window. I watched the neighbor's dog chase squirrels. I watched the mailman pass our house like he always did. I watched the world spin on, and I thought, what now? I didn't have an answer yet, but I knew this much. I would never be forgotten again. Not by him, not by our children, not by me. And that was when I remembered the box in the attic, the one I hadn't touched in decades, the one Dennis told me to leave alone. My hands started shaking. I stood up, and I climbed the stairs. The attic smelled like old cedar and forgotten years. Dust floated through the morning light like quiet ghosts, dancing on memories too stubborn to fade. I hadn't been up here in a long, long time. Dennis always said it was his space, tools, fishing gear, crates labeled in black marker with things like taxes and Xmas lights, do not throw. But there, Tucked behind a sagging bookshelf was the box I remembered from way back, gray, dented, with a broken latch and Dennis's handwriting across the lid. Private, do not open. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the silence in the house. Maybe it was that gym selfie still burning in my brain. Or maybe it was 30 years of swallowing secrets like pills I didn't need. But I pulled the box out, coughing through the dust, and sat cross-legged on the attic floor like a child about to open a birthday present. The latch cracked open easily. The first thing I saw were letters, dozens of them, yellowed with time, bundled in string. I pulled one out. To my dearest Evelyn. Evelyn? The handwriting was Dennis's. Neat, precise, confident. The words were tender, loving, romantic in a way I hadn't seen from him in, well, ever. I read 3 letters before my hands started to tremble. He had written to her for years, years. Before we got married, during our engagement, even after our first anniversary. He loved her. He never stopped. One of the envelopes had a return address, Wichita, Kansas. Another had something else inside. A folded photo. 2 young people on a beach. Dennis and a woman I'd never seen. She had long, dark hair and a smile that screamed freedom. There was something scrawled on the back of the photo in pen. July. Before everything changed. I knew that date. That was the summer Dennis and I got engaged. My breath hitched. I dug deeper into the box, found a small envelope marked Confidential Adoption Records. My heart nearly stopped. It was a birth certificate, a baby girl, born in October. Father, Dennis Mitchell. Mother, Evelyn Harper. She had his last name, and she'd been placed for adoption a month later. I sat there, frozen. Tears welled up, but not the kind that fall sweet and soft. These were hot, angry, full of every lie I'd been fed for decades. He'd had a child before we got married, and he'd never told me. I stood up too fast and nearly lost my balance. The floorboards creaked as I made my way back down, clutching the papers like they might catch fire. When Dennis came home that evening, he tossed his gym bag by the door and grunted something about protein powder. I was waiting at the table with the letters and the photo. "Who is Evelyn?" I asked, keeping my voice low. He looked up, confused, then annoyed. "What?" "Evelyn Harper, Kansas." I pushed the photo across the table. He stared at it, and then, for the first time in years, I saw it. Panic in his eyes. "Where did you find that?" "In the box marked Do Not Open," I snapped. "Guess what?" I opened it. He sat down slowly, rubbing his forehead. "That was a long time ago, Joanne. Before us. We were engaged," I hissed. "You were writing her after we were married." He didn't deny it. "I was young," he said. Like that explained everything. "We made a mistake. She didn't want the baby. I didn't know how to tell you." "You had 30 years," I whispered. 30 years to say something, anything." He folded his arms, suddenly defensive. "It wasn't relevant. It's not like she's in our lives. She was your daughter," I spat. Dennis stood up, jaw clenched. "Don't act like this is some kind of betrayal. It's ancient history." "Then why keep it hidden?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Why bury her in a box in the attic like she never existed?" He didn't answer. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding like a war drum. Not only had he forgotten me, he had buried part of himself, part of us, in a lie. I thought about that girl, where she was now, who she became, if she ever looked in the mirror and wondered who she looked like, and if she knew her father had traded her memory for a tidy, silent life. The next morning, I drove to the county clerk's office, requested copies, signed forms, paid fees. I didn't know what I was looking for. Closure? Vengeance? Justice? I just knew I couldn't let it sit in that box anymore. That evening, I sat alone in the living room. Dennis was at the gym again, probably flexing in front of the mirror, trying to recapture a youth that had long slipped away. My eyes drifted to the fireplace, to the mantel where family photos sat in neat rows. Weddings, graduations, smiles, all built on a lie. I picked up the photo from our 25th anniversary. He was holding a champagne glass. I was holding his hand. But when I looked closer, I could see it. My smile didn't reach my eyes. It hadn't in years. And now I knew why. I gently set the photo down. It was time to find the girl he forgot. And maybe, just maybe, find the woman I used to be. I started with the return address from one of the letters, Wichita, Kansas. It was nearly 1,000 miles away from where we lived in North Carolina, but distance didn't matter anymore. Not when the truth had already traveled so far to find me. I knew I couldn't just show up on someone's doorstep, especially not hers. She had a life, a family, maybe kids of her own. What if she didn't even know she was adopted? I needed more. I spent hours online, digging through public records, adoption registries, social media, anywhere her name might appear. The birth certificate didn't list a first name, just female Harper. But the mother's full name was there, Evelyn Harper. I found an obituary from Evelyn had passed away from cancer. No surviving spouse, no mention of children. But buried at the bottom of the digital memorial was a comment. Just a simple, "Rest easy, Mom. I miss you every day." Signed, Emily Harper, Emily. I don't know how I knew, but I just did. That was her. The next step wasn't easy. I tried to tell myself I was just looking, just curious, but deep down, I was holding on to something more, something dangerous. I was holding on to hope. Emily Harper was a teacher, 3rd grade, lived in Asheville, North Carolina, 2 hours away from me. She was beautiful, long dark hair like her mother in the photo, soft, kind eyes. I found a school newsletter with her picture in it. She had just been awarded Teacher of the Year. I sat there staring at her photo on my laptop, the glow lighting up my tear-streaked face. She looked so full of life, like someone who made the world better just by standing in it. I couldn't breathe. That night, Dennis came home to a quiet house again. I didn't speak. I didn't cook. I didn't ask how his day was. He didn't notice. He never asked why the lights were off or why I had been crying. And that told me everything. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to meet her, not as her father's wife, not even as her stepmother, just as a woman who needed to see the truth with her own eyes. I packed a small bag and wrote a note on the kitchen counter. Just 2 words, "Don't wait." I didn't tell him where I was going. I didn't owe him that. Driving into Asheville was like entering another world. The town had charm, color, laughter spilling out of cafes. I found the school easily, parked across the street, and waited. It was a Friday. Around the front doors opened and kids began spilling out, backpacks bouncing, parents waiting with tired eyes and open arms. And then I saw her, Emily. She was standing at the entrance, kneeling down to tie a little boy's shoe. She was laughing. He hugged her neck before running off, and she waved goodbye with both hands. She turned back to head inside and stopped. Our eyes met. It was just a moment, but it felt like a lifetime. I looked away first. She kept walking. I waited until the parking lot cleared. Then I walked across the street, heart pounding. My hands were shaking as I approached the front desk. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked. "Yes, My voice broke. "I'm trying to leave something for one of your teachers, Emily Harper." She eyed me suspiciously, then softened. "Sure. What is it?" I pulled an envelope from my purse. Inside was a letter I had written the night before. It didn't say who I was, just that I knew Evelyn, that I had something important to tell Emily, and that I would be in town for one more day, staying at a small motel near the highway. "Room." The receptionist nodded, took the envelope, and I left. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the motel window with a lamp on low, staring at the parking lot, waiting for headlights that never came. By morning, I had given up hope. I was packing to leave when I heard a knock on the door. Soft, hesitant. I opened it, and there she was, Emily, wearing jeans and a cardigan, holding the envelope in one hand, her phone in the other. Her eyes were guarded, but curious. "Are you Joanne Mitchell?" she asked. I nodded. She stepped inside, cautious, sat in the chair by the window. "You said you knew my mother." I sat across from her. My throat tightened. "I did, a long time ago, but I didn't know about you." Her expression flickered. "Most people didn't. She didn't talk about it." I took a deep breath. "Emily, I don't want to hurt you. I'm not here to take anything from you. I found something you deserve to know." I slid a folder across the table. Inside, the letters, the photo, a copy of the birth certificate. She opened it, read in silence. Her face went pale. "This is..." She paused, blinking fast. "He's my..." "Yes," I whispered. "Dennis. He's your father." She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she folded the folder shut and looked at me. "Why now?" "Because I didn't know. And when I found out, I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't live with the lie he kept for so long." And you deserve the truth." She looked away. Her lips trembled. "I always wondered," she said softly. She used to cry sometimes, looking at old photos. I think she wanted to tell me, but she was scared. Tears fell silently down her cheeks. I wanted to reach for her hand, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "You deserved more than a secret in a box." She stood up, still clutching the folder. "I don't know what to do with this," she said, "but thank you for telling me." And then she was gone. I sat in that room for hours after, not crying, just breathing, slowly, heavily, because part of me broke that day. But another part woke up. I wasn't done. Dennis had buried a child and a truth, but now I was going to bury something too, his comfort, his control, and his illusion of innocence. It was my turn now. The house was too clean when I got back, like someone had tried to scrub away the mess of a marriage with Lysol and silence. Dennis wasn't home. His car was gone, the gym bag missing from its usual place by the door. I didn't care. I walked straight into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine at noon. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel guilty about it. I stood in front of the fridge, staring at the magnet that held our last Christmas card. Smiling faces, matching sweaters, lies. My phone buzzed, a message from Emily. "I thought about what you said. I'd like to meet again, somewhere neutral." I felt the breath leave my chest. She wanted to see me. Again. We agreed on a little cafe halfway between our towns. I arrived first, picked a table near the window. Ordered tea, though my hands were shaking too hard to hold the cup. Then she walked in. This time, she wasn't wearing school clothes. Jeans, a soft gray sweater, minimal makeup. She looked more tired, but still so alive. She sat down slowly, setting her bag on the chair beside her. "I read through everything," she said. I nodded. I figured. She pulled out a folded letter. "There was one you didn't give me." I blinked. "What?" She handed me the letter. Another one from Dennis to Evelyn, hidden between the others. She must have found it in the envelope I left. I unfolded it and began to read, and my stomach twisted. I never wanted the baby. Evelyn made the decision, but I didn't fight it. I couldn't let Joanne find out, not with the wedding so close. It would have ruined everything. I can't afford that. I need to move on, forget. I stared at the words. I felt like I was falling. Emily was quiet. "I thought maybe you hadn't read that one. But maybe you did, and gave it to me anyway." "I did," I said softly. "You deserved to know." She looked at me then, and I saw something shift behind her eyes, something fierce. "You know what hurts?" she whispered. "I grew up thinking I wasn't wanted because of my mother's mistakes. But he made that choice too. He erased me before I was even born." I didn't know what to say. No apology felt big enough. But then she added, "And he lived his happy little life while I wondered what I was missing." I reached across the table. This time, she let me take her hand. "I missed you too," I whispered. "Even if I didn't know I was missing you." She wiped her eyes. "You're the first person who's ever said that to me." We sat there for a long time, just breathing, just being. When we parted, she hugged me and said, "He doesn't deserve to know me." I nodded. "I won't tell him you reached out. That's your choice." But something in me was already moving, because it was time they knew. All of them. My kids, Dennis, everyone who ever looked at me like I was just a body in the background. I went home and pulled out every photo album, every scrapbook, every piece of evidence of the life I had carefully built. I spread them out across the living room floor. Then I pulled out a notebook and started writing. Every memory, every insult, every moment they didn't know they were breaking me. I called it the diary they never read. I recorded videos, raw, emotional, honest. I didn't name names. I didn't scream. I simply told the truth, day by day. Quiet vengeance, slow release. I uploaded them to a private channel, hidden behind a generic name. And then I waited, because one day, they'd see it. They'd see me. And when they did, I wanted them to feel it in their bones, that I wasn't their shadow anymore. I was the storm coming for their silence. It was my son's voice that finally snapped something in me. "Mom, you really need to get over all this drama," he said, pacing my kitchen like he owned the place, wearing the same smug expression Dennis always had when he was trying to minimize my pain. I had called him, Matthew, my youngest, just to talk. I thought maybe he'd listen, maybe he'd understand. I had raised him, kissed his scraped knees, stayed up during finals making grilled cheese and coffee. But now, he stood there, 33 years old, brushing off my heartbreak like it was nothing more than a change in the weather. "Your father and I are separating," I told him. He blinked. "So? You think I'm surprised? You two haven't been close in years. Don't you want to know why?" He sighed, already tired of me. "Look, I love you, but you make everything into a big deal. Just divorce him and move on." That sentence clanged through my skull like a dropped pot. Move on. As if I hadn't been stuck for 3 decades. As if healing were as simple as a signature and a suitcase. He didn't ask what Dennis had done. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just grabbed a protein bar from the pantry and said, "Anyway, I've got a call in 20 minutes. Let me know when you need me to help move stuff." And then he left. That night. I couldn't sleep. My body was frozen in bed, but my mind was moving like a train with no brakes. His words echoed louder than they should have. "You make everything into a big deal." I stood up. I didn't turn on the lights. I walked into his old room, still untouched, like he was 15 and home from school. Posters still on the wall, his old baseball trophies lined up neatly on the shelf. And then I saw it, his laptop. He always left it here, claiming it was a backup. I know I shouldn't have, but I did. I opened it, logged in. He never changed his password. I typed it, Panthers 2012. It opened. There, in his chat history, a thread with his brother, my oldest, Daniel. I stared at the screen, and then I started reading. Daniel: "Have you talked to Mom lately? She's been weird." Matthew: "Ugh, yeah, she's going full martyr mode again." Daniel: "What's new? She thrives on guilt." Matthew: "It's like she wants to be miserable." Daniel: "I just avoid. It's easier." Matthew: "Honestly, once Dad dumps her, maybe she'll stop pretending like she's some kind of saint." I stopped breathing. I scrolled. It got worse. Matthew: "She needs therapy or a hobby." Daniel: "Yeah, or a reality check." They laughed at me, mocked me, my own sons. The ones I carried, raised, sacrificed for. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember walking back to my bedroom, but I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, holding my stomach like I'd been punched from the inside. I had been humiliated, first by Dennis, now by my children. The grief wasn't even sharp anymore. It was dull, heavy, and it settled into my bones. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about a marriage. It was about a lifetime of being the emotional garbage bin for everyone around me. I was the fixer, the cleaner, the planner, the comforter, never the priority, never the person they worried about. I had given everything, and they'd built their lives on my exhaustion. So I made a new plan, not to scream, not to fight, but to vanish, emotionally, piece by piece. That night, I turned off my phone. I didn't answer the door when Matthew came back a few days later, knocking, calling, texting. "Are you okay?" Because apparently now he was concerned. I let the unanswered texts stack up like dirty dishes. I stopped checking the group chat. I stopped responding to family updates. And something strange happened. No one really chased after me. They just moved on, like I was a temporary absence in a schedule. I watched it happen, quietly. And I began cleaning out the house, not like before. Not to tidy, but to erase myself from it, one drawer at a time, donating my old clothes, shredding paperwork, emptying shelves. It was slow, and it was holy. I started to feel lighter, and with every item I removed, every picture I took down, every cabinet I cleared, I thought, you don't get to keep pieces of me anymore. Not Dennis, not my sons, not anyone who treated my presence like background noise. I went to the bank, started shifting accounts, quietly, legally. I met with a lawyer, updated my will. I didn't cut them off entirely. No, that would be too kind. I left everything in place, but I changed the locks to my emotions. They would never know me again. Not the real me. They had proven they didn't want to, so I stopped offering. And for the first time in my life, the silence around me didn't feel empty. It felt like freedom. The wind was soft that morning, curling through the open window like a whisper, brushing against my cheek as if to say, "You did it." I was standing in the doorway of my new home, small, quiet, surrounded by trees that sang in the breeze instead of shouting demands at me. The walls were painted light blue. There were flowers in the garden I had planted myself. And inside, not a single voice tried to drown me out. It had been months since I left. Months since I looked anyone in that old house in the eye. And still, no one came after me. Not Dennis, not the boys. And I didn't cry over it. Not anymore. I'd poured enough tears into people who built boats and sailed away with my devotion. Now I was the ocean, and they would feel my absence like a tide they could never control. The day started like any other, quiet and slow. I made coffee, strong and black, just how I liked it, not how Dennis used to complain about. I stepped out onto the porch and sat with my cup, letting the sun warm my face. My laptop pinged with a new comment on one of my videos, the anonymous diary I had started, the woman in the window. No names, no faces, just my voice, reading pieces of the life I used to live. The episodes were titled simply, The Burnt Toast, The Forgotten Call, The Empty Dinner Table. Thousands of people had found the channel, most of them women, most of them just like me. They commented things like, I thought I was the only one. You said what I never had the courage to. This made me cry, and then made me brave. It was healing, and it was power. Then I saw it. A new email. Subject, please mom. I stared at it. It was from Matthew. I waited a long time before opening it. I saw your videos. Someone from my office sent one in our team chat without knowing. I recognized your voice. I'm not proud of the things I said. I know I hurt you. I don't even know how to start fixing it, but I want to, if you'll let me. There was a second email, from Daniel. I'm sorry, Mom. I was a coward. I didn't want to face what I did to you, what we all did. I wish I could take it back. I closed the laptop. I didn't respond, not because I hated them, but because I finally understood something sacred. I didn't need them to be whole. I wasn't waiting for their redemption. I had already found mine. Later that week, I received a certified letter from Dennis. Inside, a handwritten note. Joanne, I saw your videos too. I didn't realize how blind I'd been until the whole world told me. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know. I see you now. I wish I had sooner. He had enclosed a check, a large one, not as a bribe, not as hush money, just labeled, what I owe you for the life you gave me. I didn't cash it, but I didn't send it back either. I tucked it into a drawer with the letters I wrote, but never mailed. That evening, I lit a candle in the kitchen. Just one, like I did all those years ago. But this time, it wasn't for an anniversary. It was for myself. A ceremony. A beginning. I made dinner, nothing fancy, a little pasta, garlic bread. I poured a glass of wine and sat alone at my table, and I smiled. Because I wasn't lonely. I was free. I raised my glass toward the window, toward the moon rising above the trees, and whispered, to the woman they forgot, to the woman I found. And in that silence, where once I was invisible, I became unforgettable. The night before our anniversary, I ironed his favorite shirt, not because he asked, but because part of me still wanted to believe he might wear it and take me out somewhere, anywhere. 33 years of marriage had to count for something, but the morning came like all the others, empty. He came downstairs already dressed for the gym, tank top, shorts, headphones around his neck. I was setting the table, careful with the napkins, warming the biscuits in the oven, the way he liked them. He didn't look at me, not once, just grabbed his protein shake, gulped it down, and tapped away at his phone. I heard the little ding of a social media post. My heart dropped. I turned to see the screen. A photo of him in the gym mirror, sweat gleaming, caption, still grinding, no days off. No mention of me, no mention of our wedding day, no mention of 3 decades of sacrifice. I stood there frozen, the smell of biscuits rising behind me, and felt it, the shift, like something inside me had snapped, clean and quiet, like a bone that's been cracked for years and finally gives way. He looked up then, chewing a protein bar. What's with the food? We got company or something? I walked over and placed his plate on the table. Eggs, toast, jam, and a plain white envelope beside his juice. He sat down, oblivious, picked up the envelope, still chewing. What's this, a card? He mumbled, grinning. I didn't answer. He opened it and read. His smile vanished. Divorce? He said, the word tasting foreign in his mouth. I nodded. Wait, are you serious? I looked him in the eyes for the first time in weeks, maybe months. 5 years in a row, Dennis. 5. You didn't even say good morning. He blinked like he couldn't process it. I was heading to the gym. Didn't know you'd turn into a drama queen over a date. I laughed. It was sharp, bitter, and cold. It's not the date. It's that you stopped seeing me somewhere around. He scoffed and stood up. Oh, come on, Joanne. You're really going to throw away everything over this? No, Dennis, I said. You threw it away, year after year, ignoring me in this house like I was the maid, smiling for strangers online while forgetting the woman who kept your life glued together. He was quiet then. For once, he had nothing to say. I walked upstairs, left him sitting there with his juice and his silence. I didn't cry. Not this time. Because somewhere deep in my bones, I already knew this wasn't about an anniversary. It was about everything that came after. And the box in the attic was calling to me. The attic door moaned as I pulled it open, the wooden ladder creaking under my weight, like it knew the burden I was carrying up with me. It wasn't just a box I was looking for. It was something more, something that had lived in shadows and dust, something Dennis had warned me never to touch. The air up there was stale and heavy with time. Old Christmas decorations, faded storage bins, a suitcase we hadn't opened since our honeymoon. And there it was, tucked far in the back, like a secret buried under decades, the gray metal box. I'd seen it for years. He always said it was work stuff, boring, not worth the trouble. I never questioned it, because that's what I was trained to do, not question. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I dragged it out into the light and knelt down. The latch was stiff but gave way. Inside were papers, old, yellowed, some creased from being folded and refolded. I pulled them out, one by one, my fingers trembling. Letters, dozens of them, all addressed to Evelyn Harper. I read the first line of one. I miss you every day. I wish things were different. My heart slowed. I opened another. I'll never stop loving you, even after I say I do. I couldn't breathe. They were all from Dennis, written before and after our wedding. Some had dates from the early years of our marriage, after we had moved in together. He hadn't just remembered someone from his past. He had loved her, actively, secretly, all while building a life with me. My stomach turned. At the bottom of the pile was a manila folder. Inside, official-looking documents. My hands shook as I opened it. Adoption papers, a baby girl, Emily Harper. Born October, just 6 months after our engagement. And Dennis had signed the papers. Father, Dennis R. Mitchell. Mother, Evelyn Harper. The baby had been put up for adoption a month after birth. He had a daughter, and he never told me. The attic swirled around me, my breath growing shallow, my knees threatening to buckle. I clutched the papers like a lifeline, like if I held tight enough I could stop the truth from cutting deeper. But it was too late. He had buried a child in silence, buried me in the same box. I stayed in that attic for what felt like hours, reading, rereading, letting the weight of it crush every illusion I had left. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him, not yet. I wasn't going to yell or cry or beg for answers. He didn't deserve my pain. He was going to get my silence, my distance, and my plan. Because something inside me had shifted again. Only this time, it didn't break. It sharpened. And now I had nothing left to lose. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because of the wrinkles or the gray at my temples, but because of the stillness in her eyes. It wasn't numbness. It wasn't sadness. It was something colder, clearer. Resolve. I knew now that I had spent 3 decades living in the background of my own life, a faded figure in the photo of a man who never really saw me. I had loved, served, forgiven, and in return, I had been made invisible. Not anymore. I went downstairs. Dennis was already gone, off to the gym, like clockwork. His car keys were missing, his shaker bottle still on the counter, the blender unwashed. I didn't touch it. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with the adoption file, the letters, and a legal pad. I began to write, not to him, to her. Dear Emily, you don't know me, but I know your name. I know the year you were born. I know the man who gave you life, and the man who never gave you a place in his. I don't know what your life became, but I hope it was beautiful. I hope you were loved. I hope the world was softer to you than it was to the girl I used to be. The words came slowly at first, but then poured out like a river breaking through a dam. You deserve to know that you existed, that someone kept your name in a box, hidden like a wound. You deserved more. I wasn't sure if I'd ever send it, but I had to write it. I folded the letter and tucked it into my purse. And that afternoon, I drove, not far, just into town, to the library, to the local courthouse, anywhere I could start searching for Evelyn Harper, for Emily, for a thread, a clue, a sign. It took time. Too much. I hit dead ends. But eventually, a birth record led to an obituary. Evelyn Harper, Wichita, Kansas. And in the condolence comments on the digital memorial page, buried among the prayers and the rest in peace, was one that stopped me cold. I miss you every day, Mom. I wish you had told me more. Emily. I read it over and over. She existed, she had survived, and she was looking for something too. The trail led to Asheville, North Carolina. A teacher. Elementary school. A quiet, peaceful life. 2 hours from me. I sat in my car for an hour just holding the address in my hand. The sky had turned gold, and the day was slipping into evening. I drove home in silence. That night, I packed a small bag. Nothing dramatic, just a toothbrush, a change of clothes, and the file. I didn't tell Dennis I was leaving. I left a note that said, "Don't wait up." And I drove. The road to Asheville was long and winding. The mountains rose like sentinels around me, watching, waiting. When I pulled into the parking lot of her school the next day, I didn't go in. I just sat there, behind the wheel, watching. Children poured out in waves, laughter echoing through the air. Parents waited at the curb. Teachers stood at the doors, smiling, waving. And then I saw her, Emily. Long, dark hair, warm eyes. She knelt to tie a little girl's shoe. She looked up and smiled, not at me, just at the world. And my breath caught. She was real. She was here, and she had no idea. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tight they ached. I didn't get out. Not yet. I wasn't ready. But I would be. Because this wasn't just about the daughter Dennis had hidden. It was about the woman I had forgotten. Me. And she was just beginning to wake up. The next day, I went back. I didn't wear anything special, just a soft cardigan and a pair of old slacks. Comfortable, quiet. I wasn't there to make a scene. I was there to cross a line I had waited too long to even see. I walked into the school's main office just before dismissal. The receptionist smiled politely, asked how she could help me. "I'm here to leave something for Miss Emily Harper," I said, holding out a sealed envelope. Inside was the letter I had written, along with a note. "Please read this when you're alone. If you'd like to meet, I'll be staying at the Blue Pines Motel, room." The woman nodded and placed it in a mail slot behind the desk. No questions asked. I left and waited. I didn't expect her to come. The Blue Pines was one of those roadside places with creaky floors and floral curtains from the kind of place where everything smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old pine wood. I sat by the window with the curtain cracked open, watching the parking lot. For hours. By nightfall, I told myself to let it go, to sleep, but my chest wouldn't stop buzzing. I had done something irreversible. The next morning, I was brushing my hair when I heard the knock. 3 soft taps. I froze. My hands, my breath, my thoughts, everything stopped. I opened the door. She was standing there. Emily, closer now than ever, her face full of questions, her hands gripping her phone. She looked so much like him, and not at all. Her eyes held something different. Depth, warmth, curiosity. "Are you Joanne Mitchell?" she asked. I nodded. My throat was too tight for words. "I got your letter," she said. "Can I come in?" She sat on the edge of the small motel chair, glancing at the folder I had laid out on the table. She hadn't touched it yet, just looked at me. "I don't know why I came," she said quietly, "but something in your letter, it felt honest." "It was," I whispered. She took a deep breath. "So, you were married to him?" "Yes," I said. She reached for the folder, opened it, scanned the letters. "This is real." I nodded again. "I always wondered," she murmured. "My mom never talked about him. Only once, when I was 12. She cried a little and said, 'Some truths aren't safe.' And then she never said another word." "She loved you," I said. "I can see that even from the way Dennis wrote about her." Emily scoffed. "So he loved her too, and still gave me away." The room fell into a stillness. Then she asked the question I had been dreading. "Did he ever try to find me?" I looked her in the eyes. "No." She swallowed hard. "That hurts," she whispered. I nodded. "It should." She stared down at her hands for a long time. "So why are you here?" "To tell you that you're not a secret anymore, that you matter, even if he made you feel like a mistake." "You're not. You're the truth he buried, but I won't let him bury you again." A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it quickly. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this," she admitted. "You don't have to do anything," I said. "This isn't for him. It's for you. And maybe for me, too." She looked at me then, really looked, and nodded. We talked for 2 hours after that. Not just about Dennis, but about her life, her job, her students, her garden. She was brilliant, compassionate, brave. Everything I had once hoped a daughter of mine would be. When she left, she hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for finding me." I sat on the motel bed long after the door closed, her perfume still lingering in the room. And for the first time in decades, I felt seen. But more than that, I felt real. I didn't tell Dennis. Not about Emily. Not about the motel. Not about the truth I had dug up from the attic like bones in the dirt. He didn't deserve to know that she existed in my life now. That I had found something sacred. Something his lies had tried to erase. It was mine. Ours. A secret I could hold. Not to keep it hidden, but to protect it from the rot he left behind. When I returned home, nothing had changed. The laundry was still in its usual pile on the floor by his side of the bed. His gym clothes draped over the back of the living room chair, like a flag planted on conquered territory. The same protein shakes filled the fridge, each one lined up like obedient little soldiers. But something in me had changed. I didn't put the clothes in the wash. I didn't cook. I didn't clean. And Dennis noticed. By day 3, he stood in the doorway, hands on hips. "What's going on with you lately?" I looked up from my notebook, calm, composed. "Nothing." "Well, I mean, the house is a mess. You haven't made dinner since last week." "You didn't notice when I did," I replied, "so I figured it wouldn't make a difference when I stopped." He rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on, Joanne. You can't seriously still be on this kick. I said I was sorry about the anniversary." "You didn't say you were sorry. You said I was being dramatic." "Well," he began, then wisely stopped himself. I stood up, slowly. "Dennis," I said, voice even, "what would you do if I disappeared?" He blinked. "What? If I just packed a bag and left? Not with a note, not with a fight, just vanished?" He frowned. "That's not funny. It's not supposed to be." He rubbed his neck, suddenly uncomfortable. "Look, if you're unhappy, we can go to counseling or something." Now he wanted counseling? Now? After 33 years of silence, invisibility, neglect, I almost laughed, but instead I said nothing, because silence had become my weapon. I started small. I stopped responding to group texts from the boys, stopped answering calls that only came when someone needed something. They didn't call to check on me. They never had. They called for recipes, for birthday reminders, for "Mom, can you send me that tax form again?" I stopped answering. I stopped being available, and no one noticed. That was the part that broke me, but it was also the part that freed me. I pulled out a small leather-bound notebook from the drawer. It was old, something I used to jot recipes in. I began turning those blank pages into a record, not of dates, but of moments. The times I was dismissed, mocked, forgotten. I titled the front, "The Diary They Never Read." Each entry was a story, like the time I stayed up until a.m. sewing Daniel's costume for the school play. And the next day, he told his teacher he made it with his dad. Or the Thanksgiving I spent alone in the kitchen while everyone else watched football and laughed in the living room. Not one of them offered to help. Or the day I found out my mother had died and Dennis still asked me to pick up his dry cleaning. I filled every page. I wrote with the rage of a woman who had waited too long to scream. And then I started recording. I didn't show my face, just my voice, low and even, reading the entries. I uploaded them anonymously to a channel I called The Window Seat. I didn't expect anyone to listen, but they did. Thousands of views, hundreds of comments. Women, older, younger, somewhere in between, telling me I had written their lives. They said things like, "This is the sound of my soul. I thought I was crazy for feeling this way. You made me feel less alone." It gave me strength I didn't know I had. One night, I found Dennis asleep in the recliner, snoring, TV buzzing static, and I stared at him, not with hatred, not with sadness, with clarity. He would never know the depths of what he broke, and I didn't need him to, because I was no longer speaking to him. I was speaking to the world, and they were listening. It was a Sunday morning when the silence in the house finally started to feel different. Not oppressive, not hollow, not just peaceful. Dennis had left early, gym again, or maybe brunch with one of his gym buddies who treated him like a motivational poster with a pulse. I didn't ask anymore. I no longer tracked his movements the way I used to, hoping for crumbs of affection. The more he disappeared, the more space I had to breathe. And today, I had plans. I opened the front closet and pulled out 3 dusty photo albums, the kind with plastic sleeves and faded labels: family vacation, Matthew's graduation, Christmas, years of captured moments, staged smiles. But I could see it now, clearer than ever. I wasn't really in them. Sure, I was physically present, off to the side, holding a plate, standing behind someone, but never in the center, never framed with care, always the background, always convenient. I laid the albums out across the floor, and then I did something I never imagined I would. I began taking the pictures out, one by one, not to destroy them, to free myself from them. Each photo went into a new box labeled "What They Remember," and beside me I placed an empty album, a fresh one. Its label, "What I Lived." Into that one I began placing my pictures, the ones no one else ever bothered to print. A blurry photo Emily had taken of me sipping tea in Asheville. A picture I'd snapped of the mountains outside the motel. A Polaroid from years ago, just me in the backyard, reading under the tree. Real moments, not posed, not performative, mine. Midway through, I paused to check my messages, not out of habit, just curiosity. There were 2 new voicemails, both from Matthew. The first one: "Mom, hey, I know you're probably mad. I just wanted to check in. Can you call me back, please?" The second one came a day later. "Okay, I saw your video. The window seat. I didn't know it was you at first, but I know now. I'm sorry, Mom, really. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize any of it." I listened without reacting. Then I deleted them both, because sometimes closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision, and I had made mine. Later that evening, I made a list, not a to-do list, not a grocery list, a legacy list. At the top I wrote, "Things I will leave behind that matter. Truth, a name they'll remember, a voice that didn't stay quiet, a daughter who knows she was never forgotten, a story other women can live louder because of that night." I recorded something new. It was the first video where I let myself be seen, just my hands at first, sorting the albums, writing in the notebook. Then, slowly, I turned the camera toward myself, lines on my face, gray in my hair. I didn't apologize for it. I said, "This is what a woman looks like when she stops waiting to be chosen." And I posted it. The response was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Messages poured in. Women from all over the country, from Texas to Oregon, from Maine to Miami. Some cried, some raged, some just said, "Thank you for showing me I'm not invisible." I had become the woman I wished I'd seen when I was younger. And I didn't need anyone to validate it. Not Dennis, not the boys, not even Emily, though I had a feeling she was watching, quietly, maybe even smiling. As I sat on the porch, sipping tea in the fading light, I felt it rise up inside me. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had stopped asking others for permission to feel whole. And in that stillness, something inside whispered, "It's almost time. Not for revenge, not even for justice, for release, for goodbye, for something so long overdue, it had almost become myth, freedom." The morning began with soft rain tapping on the window, a gentle rhythm that reminded me of lullabies I used to hum when the boys were babies. Before the noise, before the hurt, before I became the woman who held everything together until her own pieces didn't fit anymore. I stood in the kitchen barefoot, wrapping my hands around a warm mug, staring at the empty chair across from me, Dennis's chair. He still lived in the house, technically, but we hadn't spoken much since the day I handed him those divorce papers beside his orange juice. He'd stopped asking questions, stopped trying. Maybe he thought ignoring the cracks would make the walls stop falling. But today, I had something for him. A farewell, not a confrontation. Just the truth, wrapped in silence and ceremony. I packed a small box, nothing more than what I needed. I had already moved what mattered to the cottage outside Asheville, where Emily lived just 2 towns over. She didn't know it yet, but we'd run into each other again. And this time, I'd be ready to be more than just the woman who showed her a box of secrets. I sat down and began writing. 1 letter for each of them. To Dennis. You will read this and assume I'm angry, but I'm not. That part of me burned out long ago. What I feel now is the calm that follows the fire. I gave you my best years, Dennis, and you didn't even notice when they passed. I asked for nothing and you offered less. I used to mourn that, But now, I simply let it go. Consider this not a goodbye, but a release. I free you from pretending, and I free myself from disappearing. To Daniel and Matthew, you called me dramatic, a martyr, a weight. But I remember staying up during storms because you were scared of the thunder. I remember hand-sewing Halloween costumes. I remember covering for your father when he forgot birthdays so you wouldn't feel forgotten too. And I remember your words, every one of them. I don't want your guilt. I want your growth. If one day you understand what I gave, I hope it teaches you how to cherish the women who stand quietly beside you now. I placed the letters on the hallway table. Then I cooked one last meal. Not for them, for me. Eggs, bacon, toast with too much butter. The kind of breakfast I used to make for everyone else. This time I sat down and ate it slowly, like a farewell feast to the version of myself I had carried for so long. By noon, I had my coat on. As I reached the front door, I paused. Then, on impulse, I walked to the living room and turned the TV on. Dennis's favorite news channel blared. I turned it off and wrote 3 words on the whiteboard by the fridge. I was here, then I walked out. No slamming doors, no dramatic exits. Just a choice. The cottage was waiting for me. When I arrived, I opened the windows wide. Let the fresh mountain air sweep through the rooms like a baptism. I placed my albums, What I Lived, on the shelf, right in the center. The very next day, I received a message on my anonymous channel. It was from Emily. I saw the video, the one with your face. I knew it was you. I just wanted you to know, I'm ready to talk, really talk. If you are. I closed my laptop slowly, then smiled, because I was ready. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a woman holding the world together with shaking hands. I felt like a woman stepping into the one she was always meant to be. Free, whole, and unforgettable. The invitation came in a white envelope slipped under my cottage door. No name, just elegant handwriting. You are invited to dinner. One last time. J. At first I thought it might be from Emily, but she always signed her name with a flourish, a tiny loop in the Y. This was simpler, familiar, stiff. Dennis. It was him. I almost didn't go. But then I thought of the years I had swallowed silence like medicine, of the dinners I'd made with shaking hands while he scrolled through his phone, of the nights I'd sat across from him, invisible, and I knew I had to go. Not for him, for me. The house was exactly as I'd left it, too clean, too cold, like a hotel trying to remember what a home once felt like. He opened the door and stepped aside without a word. I walked in. The smell of roast chicken wafted through the hallway, an obvious attempt at normal. But nothing about this was normal anymore. The dining table was set for 2, real candles, cloth napkins. He gestured for me to sit. We ate mostly in silence. He kept trying to meet my eyes. I kept looking past him, to the photos still on the wall. Our family, frozen in time. All those smiles that didn't quite reach my eyes. Finally, he spoke. I saw your videos, he said. I said nothing. I didn't know it was you at first. Someone at the gym shared one, said it reminded him of his mom. I waited. He cleared his throat. It was like hearing a ghost. Still, I said nothing. I guess I always thought you were okay, that we were fine. I looked at him then. Because I didn't scream? He looked down. I didn't know how unhappy you were, he whispered. I wasn't unhappy, I replied. I was erased. He nodded slowly. I deserved to lose you. I leaned back in my chair. You didn't lose me. You gave me away. One thoughtless moment at a time. He swallowed hard. I wanted to say sorry. You just did. He blinked. That's it? I didn't come for an apology, Dennis. Then why did you come? I looked him in the eye, my voice calm. Sure, to forgive myself for staying as long as I did. He looked stunned, broken even, but I didn't reach for him. I didn't soften. I had done that for too long. I stood up. He followed. At the door he said, Is there anything I can do? I turned to him. Be better, for the people who still let you close. Then I walked out, into the night, into myself. The stars above the cottage twinkled as I parked my car and stepped inside. My phone buzzed. A message from Emily. Dinner? Just the 2 of us. I want to tell you about my life. I want to hear about yours. I replied, yes. And this time, I'll sit at the head of the table, because I wasn't a supporting character anymore. I was the author, and my story had just begun. The table was round this time. No head, no sides, No place to hide behind roles or silence. Emily had chosen a small, sunlit cafe tucked between an art gallery and a bookstore in the heart of Asheville. She said she liked it because it was quiet but full of stories. I arrived early, nervous, holding my breath in the space between then and now. I wore a soft blue sweater and my favorite earrings, tiny silver birds I hadn't worn in years. They had been a gift from Dennis, back when he still noticed things like birthdays and joy. But today, they were mine. She walked in 10 minutes later, cheeks rosy from the cold, a tote bag on her shoulder, a book tucked under her arm. She looked at me and smiled, and this time, it was different. It wasn't guarded. It wasn't uncertain. It was warm. We ordered tea and sat in a booth near the window. No walls, no masks. "I've been thinking about that day," she said after our first few sips, "at the motel. The way you looked at me." "I remember," I said softly. "You looked heartbroken." I nodded. I was, but not because of him. "No," I whispered, "because I didn't know how much of my life I had missed until I saw your face." She set her tea down gently. "I wasn't angry, you know, at you. I think I expected to be. But I wasn't. I'm grateful," I said, "because I don't know how I would have survived your silence." She smiled again. "I thought I had no mother, and you thought you had no daughter. Life really did a number on us, didn't it?" We both laughed, a soft, sad laugh that felt more like a sigh. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. "I want you to have this," she said, sliding it across the table. I opened it. Inside was a photo frame, a picture of the two of us at the cafe where we first met. She must have had someone take it when I wasn't looking. In the photo, I was laughing, truly laughing. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen myself that way. My hands trembled as I touched the frame. "I want you in my life," she said. "Really in it. Holidays, birthdays, just Saturdays even." Tears welled up in my eyes. "I'd like that, more than you know. And one day," she added, "when I have kids, I want them to call you Grandma." It hit me like a wave. Not grief, not sorrow, joy, unexpected, uninvited, but welcome. We sat in that cafe until the sun dipped low, until the waiter dimmed the lights and placed candles on each table. As we hugged goodbye, she whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me, or on yourself." And I whispered back, "Thank you for being found." That night, I returned to the cottage, lit a candle on the porch, and sat in silence. But this time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was sacred. Inside, on my bookshelf, next to my diary and the albums I'd finally organized, I placed the photo of us, front and center. Not hidden in a box, not buried in the attic, but seen, cherished, alive. Because in the end, I hadn't just served breakfast with divorce papers. I had served myself a second chance, and it was the best damn meal of my life. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.